Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Śrī Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Vande Guru Nisha Bhakta Nisha Nisha Vatarakan Tat Prakasham Tat Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Sangyakam Granthera Arambha Kori Mangalacharana Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tinera Smarana Hoya Vigana Vinashana Anayasa Sapal Nija Vanchita Purana Jaya Jaya Kripa Moy Jagatiranath Sarva Jagatira Kuru Shubhadrishtipad Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Om Tat Sat. Krishna, dear worshipable devotees, thank you so much for taking out your valuable time to read here Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta together. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Padeya Mora Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa Shri Rupa Raghunatha Padeya Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa. So we are reading Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta Adi Lila, chapter 5, entitled The Glories of Lord Nityananda Balram. And interestingly, Lord Nityananda Prabhu's appearance is also coming in about 2 weeks, or less than 2 weeks actually. Yeah, exactly 2 weeks actually. So what could be a better thing to do in life than to read about Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who is the Balramji. So we have been reading this purport, text number 22, and how Lord Nityananda Prabhu expands as Paravyoma. That means the place beyond this place, beyond this material world, there is a spiritual world called Paravyoma. So we have been reading about that. And if you remember, we requested devotees to learn this verse. Chintamani prakarasadmashu kalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhira vipalayantam Lakshmi sahasra shata sambrama sevyamanam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So we have been discussing about this verse. We read till this purport. It is about 10 pages long. So we will study from this point onwards today. The residents of Vaikuntha have brilliantly black complexions, much more fascinating and attractive than the dull white and black complexions found in the material world. Their bodies, being spiritual, have no equals in the material world. The beauty of a bright cloud when lightning flashes on it merely hints at their beauty. Generally, the inhabitants of Vaikuntha dress in yellow clothing. Their bodies are delicate and attractively built, and their eyes are like the petals of lotus flowers. Like Lord Vishnu, the residents of Vaikuntha have 4 hands decorated with a conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. Their chests are beautifully broad and fully decorated with necklaces of a brilliant diamond-like metal surrounded by costly jewels never to be found in the material world. The residents of Vaikuntha are always powerful and effulgent. Some of them have complexions like red coral cat's eyes and lotus flowers. And each of them has earrings of costly jewels. On their heads they wear flowery crowns resembling garlands. In the Vaikuntha there are airplanes, but they make no tumultuous sounds. Material airplanes are not at all safe. They can fall down and crash at any time, for matter is imperfect in every respect. In the spiritual sky, however, the airplanes are also spiritual, and they are spiritually brilliant and bright. These airplanes do not fly business executives, politicians, or planning commissions as passengers, nor do they carry cargo or postal bags, for these are all unknown there. These planes are for pleasure trips only, and the residents of Vaikuntha fly in them with their heavenly, beautiful, fairy-like consorts. Therefore, these airplanes, full of residents of Vaikuntha, both male and female, increase the beauty of the spiritual sky. We cannot imagine how beautiful they are, but their beauty may be compared to the clouds in the sky, accompanied by silver branches of electric lighting. The spiritual sky of Vaikuntha is always decorated in this way. The full opulence of the internal potency of Godhead is always resplendent in Vaikuntha, where goddess of fortune are ever increasingly attached to serving the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These goddess of fortune, accompanied by their friends, always create a festive atmosphere of transcendental mirth. Always singing the glories of the Lord, they are not silent even for a moment. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Take a pause here. This is a very long purport. So as we were discussing that this verse talks about the description of the spiritual world, so particular this two sections or two paragraphs rather, talk about how the residents are in the spiritual world. How are the residents? So they have a darkish complexion, not dark like this material world, not black like the material world, or not like, even the white like the material world. Prabhupada is writing. Is attractive than the dull white and black complexion in the material world. Right? So in the material world, the beauty of the spiritual world cannot be compared to the white or the black or the brown or the yellow, any color. It's transcendental beauty. It's not material, it's transcendental. And they have no equals, as Prabhupada is mentioning. They have no equals in the material world. The beauty of compared to a bright cloud, yellow clothing, broad chest, beautiful body, eyes like the lotus, carrying Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma in their hands, wonderful garlands with costly jewels. They have very nice Vaikuntha Viman. They don't create tumultuous noise or pollution. They don't carry postal and cargoes, Prabhupada is mentioning. In short, it's all transcendental. It's because it is Chinmay. It is transcendental. So this is spiritual world. Some description about the residents, what they do, what they wear, and about the airplanes also. And very nice point here about the goddess of fortune, always singing the glories of the Lord, not even silent for a moment. This is how pure devotees are. They're always engaged 24/7 in Krishna Katha, Krishna's name, form, qualities. Even for a moment, they are not wasting time. Transcendental mirth. Yeah. So this transcendental amusement, this word came here in case, I was not familiar with this word. always create a festive atmosphere of transcendental mirth. So what does mirth means? Amusement, laughter, basically hasya parihasya. So in a festival, everyone is joyful, happy, and so it's the spiritual world is always a festival, and always everyone is transcendently happy, joyful, amused. Okay, so let's see the next maybe a few paragraphs, one or two. Anyone wants to read? Please.
I can read, Prabhu.
Yes.
Dandar Pranam devotees. There are unlimited Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, and the ratio of these planets to the material planets in the material sky is 3:1. Thus, the poor materialist is busy making political adjustments on a planet that is most insignificant in God's creation, to say nothing of this planet Earth. The whole universe, with innumerable planets throughout the galaxies, is comparable to a single mustard seed in a bag full of mustard seeds. But the poor materialists makes plans to live comfortably here and thus wastes his valuable human energy in something that is doomed to frustration. Instead of wasting his time with business speculations, he should seek the life of plain living and high spiritual thinking, and this save himself from perpetual materialistic unrest. Even if a materialist wants to enjoy developed material facilities, he can transfer himself to planets where he can experience material pleasures much more advanced than those available on Earth. The best plan is to prepare oneself to return to the spiritual sky after leaving the body. However, if one is intent on enjoying material facilities, one can transfer himself to other planets in the material sky by utilizing yogic powers. The playful spaceships of the astronauts are but childish entertainments and are of no use for the purpose. The Ashtanga yoga system is a materialistic art of controlling air by transferring it from the stomach to the navel, from the navel to the heart, from the heart to the collarbone, from there to the eyeballs, and from there to the cerebellum, and from there to any desired planet. The velocities of air and light are taken into consideration by the material scientists, but he has no information of the velocity of the mind and intelligence. We have some limited experience of the velocity of the mind because in a moment we can transfer our minds to places hundreds of thousands of miles away. Intelligence is even finer. Finer than intelligence is the soul, which is not matter like mind and intelligence, but is spirit or antimatter. The soul is hundreds of thousands of times finer and more powerful than intelligence. We can thus only imagine the velocity of the soul in its traveling from one planet to another. Needless to say, the soul travels by its own strength and not with the help of any kind of material vehicle. The bestial civilization of eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratifying has misled modern man into forgetting how powerful a soul he has. As we have already described, the soul is a spiritual spark many, many times more illuminating, dazzling, and powerful than the sun, moon, or electricity. Human life is spoiled when man does not realize his real identity with his soul. Lord Chaitanya appeared with Lord Nityananda to save man from this type of misleading civilization. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam also describes how yogis can travel to all the planets in the universe. When the vital force is lifted to the cerebellum, there's every chance that this force will burst out from the eyes, nose, ears, etc., as these are places that are known as the seventh orbit of the vital force. But the yogis can block these holes by complete suspension of air. The yogi then concentrates the vital force in the middle position, that is, between the eyebrows. At this position, the yogi can think of the planet to which he wants to go after leaving the body. He can then decide whether he wants to go to the abode of Krishna in the transcendental Vaikunthas, from which he will not be required to descend into the material world, or to travel to higher planets in the material universe. The perfect yogi is at liberty to do either. Is that the end, Prabhu? Or there's just one more paragraph?
No, there are like 7-8 pages, Mataji.
Oh my God, Hare Krishna. Okay. So just, I hope you understood all the, now you can control your life airs. That's my summary, Prabhu. Please add, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
And you can demonstrate how to do this too. Hare
Hare Krishna. I really like this point here that the whole material, not just the planet, but this entire galaxy is like a single mustard in a bag of mustards. How many mustard seeds can be in a bag of mustard? In a palm full of mustard seeds, there are like hundreds and hundreds. In a bag, there are like zillions or maybe millions. I don't know, but there's a lot, right? Just to give some context of how tiny this material world, this planet, this earth is compared to the transcendental spiritual sky, which is 3 times, the 3:1 ratio, ekapad, 3-pad vibhuti. And then Prabhupada mentions about the chakra system, some Ashtanga yoga people follow this chakra, Agya chakra, and Manipura chakra, and all these chakras are there. And a lot of business goes on this name of these chakras. So in Bhagavad Gita, there is mention about this, but it is also mentioned that it is very, very difficult. This is not the recommended process of self-realization. One devotee was asking His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj that should we do this kind of yoga to uplift this chakra and that chakra. So he said he hardly, he didn't say to do all those practices. Rather, if this system of Vayu is disturbed, it can make someone crazy. So it has to be done, even it's very difficult, first of all. It has to be done under the close guidance of a very, very elevated person who has mastered that art, which there are hardly any few maybe on this earth. In the close supervision, that means you have to be close, means physical supervision. In short, it's not recommended in this day and age. On the contrary, the Bhakti Yoga process is very easy and sublime. And so this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita also. And so the real goal of human life is spoiled when one does not realize the identity of Lord. Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda have appeared to save the man from this. So rather than trying to control different chakras, we have to overcome the chakra of life and death. And that is by the chanting of the holy name. Any other points? Any additions here? Okay, so we'll read the next part of it. So let's see who wants to read this. Anyone wants to read? Anyone?
I can read Prabhuji. Devotees, Pranam, all goes to Srila Prabhupada. For the perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of living his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is as easy as an ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. As already discussed, the material body is just a covering of the spiritual soul. Mind and intelligence are the undercoverings. And the gross body of the earth, water, air, and so on is the overcoating the soul. As such, any advanced soul who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the real soul, who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the relationship between matter and spirit, can lead the gross dress of the soul in perfect order and as he desires. By the grace of God, we have complete freedom. Because the Lord is kind to us, we can live anywhere, either in spiritual sky or in the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse this freedom causes one to fall down into the material world and suffer the threefold miseries of the conditioned life. The living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Similarly, by the choice of the soul can regain paradise and return home back to Godhead. At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between the two eyebrows and decide whether he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can in less than a second reach the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha and appear there completely in his spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply to desire to leave the material world, both in the finer and grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and lift the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahma Randra. This is the easy for one perfect in practice of yoga. Of course, man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself from the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapada, occupation of the post of the Brahma, and visit Siddhaloka and planets of materially perfect beings who have full capacities to control gravity, space, and time. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, but need only give up grosser matter. So I stop here, Prabhuji. So it looks like, Prabhuji, the way we use our free will, that will be our destination. If we will here, it was told how to, by yogi process, go to the Vaikuntha Lok or in the upper planets when we utilize our free will accordingly. But as you said, bhakti process is much easier to reach our destination. Back to Prabhuji.
That verse, Bhagavad Gita. I remember that this comes in where the yogi places his consciousness in the middle of the eyebrows. I don't recall what that verse is, but we are discussing the same point here. So, anyone knows what is this Milton in Paradise Lost?
No.
The living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of soul's choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Interesting. Maybe some kind of this looks like some 17th century novel, actually, or some kind of poet, or what must be reading this. It's a book from 17th century. The living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illustrated by. Similarly, the choice, by the choice, the soul can regain the paradise and return home back to Godhead. Again, looks like the paradise is referring to the spiritual world. And maybe someone, the character must be lost in the material world. So maybe this is, in case anyone wants to refer, they can always go back. And the paradise, the soul is the person who is lost, and then ultimately regains the paradise by the direction of Guru Sadhu Shastra. And that's the whole goal of human form of life. So it's a nice point that Prabhupada is connecting to the contemporary things at that time. Maybe it must be very famous 50 years back, or maybe in India at that time. It's always good to share our Krishna consciousness in the contemporary phase. So people in the contemporary world can connect with the things and feel the relevance more of scriptures. Okay, so I think the whole point here is the choice, and those yogis who fix their vital force between the eyebrows, and they can choose. But we have the easy and sublime way, because we have discussed, this is basically Ashtanga yoga or dhyana yoga process, which is very difficult in the beginning chapters. Krishna mentions all these different yoga processes, which are not easy thing. So better than that.
That book also could be part of his Scottish college that he went to, must require reading or something. It's my speculation.
Yeah. I think in 6th chapter, 6th chapter is about dhyana yoga. So there, these verses are there. The yogi fixes the mind in the middle of the eyebrows and chooses, but again.
Or 8th chapter, Antakale Chamameva, that kind of verse.
Those are more of bhakti yoga. I think maybe I'm also forgetting. We'll refer maybe tomorrow. Any other comments? Any thoughts before we move to the next part? Okay, so we'll try to complete this purport of Krishna willing. So who is not? Maybe Lakshya wants to read. One second. I'll move a little forward. Yeah, here. We're here.
Hare Kṛṣṇa. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere. And if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to adapt his material body to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe, where the climate condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary when one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. However, if one wants to go to the higher material planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence, and ego, but has to leave his gross dress body, made of earth, water, fire, and etc. When one goes to a transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finer and gross bodies. For one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in a spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death if one so desires. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that one will attain his next material body according to his desires at the time he leaves his body. The desires of the mind carries the soul to a suitable atmosphere, as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. Unfortunately, those who are not yogis but gross materialists who throughout their lives indulge in sense gratification are puzzled by the disarrangement of the bodily and mental condition at the time of death. Such gross sensualists, encumbered by the main ideas, desires, and associations of the lives they have led, desire something against their interest, and thus foolishly take on new bodies that perpetuate their material miseries. Systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed so that at the time of death one may consciously desire a suitable body, either on this planet or another material planet or even a transcendental planet. A civilization that does not consider the progressive advancement of the immortal soul merely fosters a bestial life. Do I read more, Prabhuji?
And you can read one more, please.
It is foolish to think that every soul that passes away goes to the same place. Either the soul goes to a place he desires at the time of death, or upon leaving his body, he is forced to accept a position according to his acts in his previous life. The difference between the materialist and the yogi is that the materialist cannot determine his next body, whereas the yogi can consciously attain a suitable body for enjoyment in the higher planets. Throughout his life, the gross materialist, who is constantly after sense gratification, spends all day earning his livelihood to maintain his family. And at night, he wastes his energy in sex enjoyment, or else goes to sleep thinking about all he has done in the daytime. That is the monotonous life of the materialist. Although differently graded as businessmen, lawyers, politicians, professors, judges, coolies, pickpockets, laborers, and so on, materialists all simply engage in eating, sleeping, feeding, and satisfaction, and thus spoil their valuable lives pursuing luxury and neglecting to perfect their lives through spiritual realization. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Prabhuji.
Oh, what did you learn, Prabhu, from this part?
That most people kind of spend their time in sense gratification, but if they're a yogi, they can at the time of death they can choose which body and which planet, or if they want to go to the abode of Krishna.
Yeah, so the reference is in the 8th chapter. So one who at the time of death fixes his life hair between the eyebrows by the strength of the yoga, with undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord and full devotion will certainly attain the Supreme Lord, as we're discussing here also. So text number 8, number 11, 12, 13. So this, but before that, we have to understand the requirements of this process. So the requirements are very, very difficult, which we discussed in text number 6.13, chapter 6, text 13, that one has to follow complete brahmacharya, one has to go and sit on a deer skin, go to the forest, and back straight, right? For sitting for 10 minutes, we can't keep our back straight, right? But to speak of hours and hours, not hours, months of meditation. So very, very tough process, and very, very dangerous actually in Kali Yuga. So therefore, a simple process is recommending. And here the connection is there is the soul, the spirit soul, and there's the subtle body, like the one layer, and then there's the gross body. So what's the gross body? Lakshan? What's a gross body?
A gross body is like a body that has the elements of earth, space, fire, water, air, and
So do we see our gross body?
Yeah.
Yes, like what we're seeing right now is basically my hand, my head, my leg, all this is gross elements, right? Made up of our bones, and all this is perceptible. We can feel it, we can touch it. Then there's a subtle body. So what's a subtle body?
a body that's like basically the soul. So like when you go to the transcendental abode of Krishna, and which doesn't contain the material elements.
That's a little different actually. So we have two bodies which are covering the soul. Okay, both are material. The subtle body is also material, and the gross body is also material. Both are material. The subtle body, as the word subtle says, it's subtle. We cannot directly perceive it. For example, the elements are mind, intelligence, and ego. As Bhagavad Gita says, Bhumi rapo nalo vayu kham mano buddhirevacha ahankara itiyamme bhinna prakriti. These are the separated energy, bhinna prakriti. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, the gross elements, and then the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego. So we cannot perceive it directly, or we cannot, like how I can touch my finger, but I cannot touch my intelligence. I cannot touch my desires, my ego, right? It's subtle. So when we go to if one goes to heavenly planets, their desires, their subtle body goes with them. Their gross body may change, right? And they may get a body which is suitable for the planet they're going to, as Prabhupada has given the example of India and Europe. So, but the subtle body, subtle material body, of course, the soul will also go. The soul and the subtle material body will go. And the gross body will change based on that planet. But when the soul goes to the spiritual world, all the material elements, including the subtle material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and mind, intelligence, ego, they all go to the coverings, the 10 coverings, or the 8 coverings, 8 coverings, which the universe is surrounded with, that the egg shape is surrounded. We have discussed that multiple times. So they go to their respective elements. Earth goes to earth element, fire element. So they all go to their respective elements, and the jiva, or the soul, the spirit soul, gets a transcendental spiritual body, as we discussed in the previous, which is completely Satchidananda. It has no material, as Prabhupada is mentioning here. When one goes to the transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finer and the gross. Finer referred to the subtle body here, minor. For one has to reach the spiritual sky, one has to be completely in a spiritual form. The soul is spiritual. The soul is not material. It's covered with the material elements. Therefore, it gets the influence by those desires, etc. Systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed. Wow, such nice point. Systematic training. Prabhupada emphasizes a lot on training. Because then only we'll be able to, mind is very, very, it's like a wild lion. Wild lion has to be trained. tamed by certain do's and don'ts. How they tame the wild lion by fasting, by making him starve. Actually, not fasting, starve. And then they ask him, okay, jump. And then the lion jumps. And then they give him some piece of flesh. And then the lion gets to know, okay, if I jump, I will get this. Similarly, we should also try to tame our wild mind, lion-like mind and intelligence through the beauty and the nectar of Krishna consciousness. And of course, training needs a master. Therefore, we need spiritual master in lives. So we can train our life, our mind and intelligence, so that when we leave our body, we can go also back home, back to Godhead. Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Okay. So where are we? With Yogis. Let's read the next part of this. Who wants to read? Yes, Vasuti, what do you want to read?
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, everyone. Yogis, however, try to perfect their lives, and therefore the Bhagavad Gita enjoins that everyone should become a yogi. Yoga is the system for linking the soul in the service of the Lord. Only under superior guidance can one practice such yoga in his life without changing his social position. As already described, a yogi can go anywhere he desires without mechanical help, for a yogi can place his mind and intelligence within the air circulating inside his body, and by practicing the art of breath control, he can mix that air with the air that blows all over the universe outside his body. With the help of this universal air, a yogi can travel to any planet and get a body suitable for its atmosphere. We can understand this process by comparing it to the electronic transmission of radio messages. With radio transmitters, sound waves produced at a certain station can travel all over the earth in seconds. But sound is produced from the eternal sky, and as already explained, subtler than the ethereal sky is the mind, and finer than the mind is the intelligence. Spirit is still finer than the intelligence, and by nature it is completely different from matter. Thus, we can just imagine how quickly the spirit soul can travel through the universal atmosphere. To come to the stage of manipulating finer elements like mind, intelligence, and spirit, one needs appropriate training, an appropriate mode of life, and appropriate association. Such training depends upon sincere prayers, devotional service, achievement of success in mystic perfection, and the successful merging of oneself in the activities of the soul and supersoul. A gross materialist, whether he be an empiric philosopher, a scientist, a psychologist, or whatever, cannot attain such success through blunt efforts and word jugglery. Will I read more, Prabhuji, or? Materialists who perform yagnas or great sacrifices are comparatively better than grosser materialists who do not know anything beyond laboratories and test tubes. The advanced materialists who perform such sacrifices can reach the planet called Vishvanara, a fiery planet similar to the sun. On this planet, which is situated on the way to Brahmaloka, the topmost planet in the universe, such an advanced materialist can free himself from all stresses of vice and its effects. When such a materialist is purified, he can rise to the orbit of the pole star, Dhruvaloka. Within this orbit, which is called the Shishumara Chakra, are situated the Aditya Lokas and the Vaikuntha planet within this universe. A purified materialist who has performed many sacrifices, undergone severe penances, and given the major portion of his wealth in charity can reach such planets as Dhruva-loka. And if he becomes still more qualified there, he can penetrate still higher orbits and pass through the navel of the universe to reach the planet Maharloka, where sages like Vrigu Muni live. In Maharloka, one can live even to the time of the partial annihilation of the universe. This annihilation begins when Anantadeva, from the lowest position in the universe, produces a great blazing fire. The heat of this fire reaches even Maharloka, and then the residents of Maharloka travel to Brahmaloka, which exists for twice the duration of Parardha time. So here the purport is explaining about yogis and different yogis. And in Bhagavad Gita, the yoga system means the connection with the God. So whatever the service a yogi will do to serve the God. So, but here Prabhupada also explaining in the purport that how many types of yogis are there, and they can travel with their spirit soul in different planets. And even here Prabhupada is also mentioning that the materialistic persons can also travel different planets like Maharloka, Dhruva-loka, like that, with their, if they do yagnas, sacrifices, etc. So, and all the yogis actually is the very, very hard path of doing different yogas, and the easy path is have given by Chaitanya Mahāprabhu, the Bhakti Yoga. And what Pran Govinda Prabhuji from his class, I learned that yoga means not only the sacrifice. Yoga means whatever we are doing for the Lord, like cooking prasadam also a yoga. Going to the temple is also yoga. So everything which is connected with the Lord is called a yoga process. And always have to be guided by a senior devotees or senior devotees who practice in the Krishna consciousness continuously, not by ourselves or by our own way. Always guided by the devotees of the Lord. Back to you, Prabhuji. Hare Kṛṣṇa.
Hare Kṛṣṇa, thank you so much, Nidhaji. A lot of technical words are there here. Maharloka, Vishwanara, Shishumara is basically dolphin, if you remember. We discussed the inverted dolphin. This is the Shishumara. And the Vaikuntha Loka in this material universe, there is also Vaikuntha Loka is mentioned here. Within this orbit is the Shishumara, the Aditya Lokas, and the Vaikuntha planet within this universe. So Maharloka is mentioned, Bhrigu Muni's place is mentioned, and the partial annihilation, that is the end of the day of Brahma. Then because of the heat, blazing fire, all the lower planets are covered with, including, what to speak of the planets below the Bhutala, Bhumandala, even the Bhu, Bhava, Mahar also, they also have to change their location, and they have to go to the upper elevation, and that is Brahmaloka. Paradha time. Paradha time is basically Brahma's lifetime. So Brahmaloka basically exists for Brahma's lifetime. So Paradha time is half of Brahma's life. So it's Dviparad. Dviparad means Brahma for 50 years and then the rest 50 years. So basically Brahmaloka or Brahmaloka, the full annihilation happens at 2 Parads times, which means 100 years of Brahma. 1 Parad time is 50 years of Brahma. Okay, let's complete this so that next time we can move further. Who wants to read the last section? Rabir, want to read?
Hare Kṛṣṇa Prabhu, Hare Kṛṣṇa devotees, Dandavata Pranam, Jai Śrīla Prabhupada. In Brahmaloka, there is an unlimited number of airplanes that are controlled not by jantra, machine, but by mantra, psychic action. Because of the existence of the mind and intelligence on Brahmaloka, its residents have feelings of happiness and distress. But there is no cause of lamentation from old age, death, fear, or distress. They feel sympathy, however, for the suffering living beings who are consumed in the fire of annihilation. The residents of Brahmaloka do not have gross material bodies to change at death, but they transform their subtle bodies into spiritual bodies and thus enter the spiritual sky. The residents of Brahmaloka can attain perfection in three different ways. Virtuous persons who reach Brahmaloka by dint of their pious work becomes masters of various planets after the resurrection of Brahma. Those who have worshipped Garbhodakshina Vishnu are liberated with Brahma. And those who are pure devotees of the personality of Godhead at once push through the covering of the universe and enter the spiritual sky. The numberless universes exist together in foam-like clusters, and so only some of them are surrounded by the water of the causal ocean. When agitated by the glance of Karanodakshaya Vishnu, material nature produces the total elements, which are 8 in number and which gradually evolve from finer to gross. A part of ego is the sky, a part of which is air, a part of which is fire, a part of which is water, a part of which is earth. Thus, one universe inflates to an area of 4 billion miles in diameter. A yogi who desires gradual liberation must penetrate all the different coverings of the universe, including the subtle coverings of the 3 qualitative modes of material nature. One who does this never has to return to this mortal world. According to Shukadev Goswami, the above description of the material and spiritual skies is neither imaginary nor utopian. The actual facts are recorded in the Vedic hymns, and Lord Vasudev disclosed them to Lord Brahma when Brahma satisfied him. One can achieve the perfection of life only when he has a definite idea of Vaikuntha and the Supreme Godhead. One should always think about and describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For this is recommended in both the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana, which are 2 authorized commentaries upon the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya has made all these subject matters easier for the fallen people of this age to accept, and Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta has therefore presented them for the easy understanding of all concerned. Hare Krishna. So here, actually, this verse nicely talks about, Prabhupada gives kind of an idea how the spiritual sky and the material sky. So if we think about that, if we just remember how this material world was created, if we remember that the whole spiritual sky, the top level is Goloka Vrindavan, Dwaraka, and Mathura, and below that innumerable number of Vaikuntha planets, and that everything is within that Brahma Jyoti, or is called Chinmay Akash or Chidakash. In a corner of that, from Vaikuntha planets Shankarshan, second Chaturbhu, Shankarshan's part, the Purusha avatar, first Purusha avatar, Karanadakshay Vishnu was lying, and he made that area which all Mahat Tattva. He looks at the Mahat Tattva, and Prabhupada here is mentioning that all this material nature, when agitated by the glance of Karanadakshay Vishnu, material nature produces the total elements. That is the 8. That 8 elements, we know that, and Prabhupada nicely gave here, that from him, the ego in that sky, in that area where Karanadakshay Vishnu was lying, in that Chidakash, which becomes the material world. And from ego, a part of the ego in that sky, from that ego, part of that is the air. And if you remember, Shruvilas Prabhu was telling before that, everything like from, the gross is the earth, the bhumi. And then next gross level is water. And everything is the density of that. Everything is twice increasing in number. And Prabhupada is mentioning here from that ego. So that ego is like, that ego starts from here. That I am, we call it false ego. We read it before in Bhagavatam also, that I am this body. So that is the ego. It starts from here. And then from there comes the air. And then from air, little more gross is the fire. Because fire we can perceive. Air we can perceive only through the skin. Or maybe sound also. When the air flows, we can hear the sound also. And then fire, then water, we can taste water, and the gross is, most gross is the earth. And Prabhupada gave the 4 billion miles in that is the diameter. And top of that is the Brahmaloka actually. And Brahmaloka, Prabhupada is saying that it is here, it is not a gross body. We can take our subtle body there, mind and intelligence. And if our mind, and here Prabhupada gives like three types of perfection in Brahmaloka. One is, if someone is virtuous person, they did a lot of, like they like help in the Krishna consciousness, or help in the different, like in the gave charity, like in those kind of people, because of their pious work, they will be the masters of different planets in this universe after resurrection of Brahma. And those who worship Lord Vishnu, like Garbhodakshay Vishnu, they are going to liberate it with Brahma. And those who are pure devotees of personality of Godhead, at once pushed to the covering of the universe, and Prabhupada is saying, enter the spiritual sky. So my understanding, I mean, what I heard from His Holiness Bhaktichar Maharaj was saying that, I mean, in this Kali Yuga, if we chant the Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra, then by mercy of Mahaprabhu, we are doing this sacrifice at the same time. We are following the highest devotee of Braja, Vrindavan. So we will, if someone do that, then they will go to the highest spiritual sky. If someone just do the worships the Vishnus, which other, they will go to the different Vaikuntha planets. So Prabhu, that's my understanding. Please add or correct.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Wonderful. So I know it was a very detailed purport, a lot of information here about material world, spiritual world. So if someone has any question about description of spiritual world, you can always remember this, Adi Lila chapter 5, text 20, and always refer this. Shows lot of insights about the comparisons about material world, spiritual world, upper planets, lower planets, Brahma, other demigods, etc. What happens from Brahmaloka? Sometimes we have read, okay, it may come back again, right? It may happen to the people who enter with a mode of goodness, Brahma Bhuvanaloka, but some are there who may go to the spiritual world, some may get liberated. So different destinations may they may proceed from Brahmaloka. So a lot of details are there in this wonderful purport. And to conclude, Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta has therefore presented in an easy manner. Lord Chaitanya has made this subject easier for the fallen people of this age to accept. Basically, okay, this is. So, any last comments or additions before we wrap up today? Thank you so much. Grantaraj Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta ki jai. Śrī Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Mahāshaya ki jai. Śrī Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai. Thank you. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyo vachapatitanam Hare Kṛṣṇa. Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
much.
Hare Kṛṣṇa.